There's only one game remaining in the NFL season, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about the two that just happened. Plus, the Chargers get a new offensive coordinator because he got the boot from Dallas, plus an early look at the big game coming up in 2 weeks. This is the Huddle presented by OddsChecker. I'm Pat Mayo, joined as always by Brian Matthews, Pam Maldonado, and Ross Tucker to break down what we just saw in the NFL. Plus, we need to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl, but I want to start with a new coaching hire. Kellen Moore, the new offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, when we take a look back at what Kellen Moore has done in Dallas over the past 4 years, they've had really good offenses the entire time. When you look at yards per play, points per game, it doesn't really matter what metric you use. The Cowboys' offense has been really good. Don't ask their fans, because they would tell you that the offense is horrible, Dak is horrible, and that's just the way that it goes. So this one is very interesting to me. And Pam, we're going to start with you on this. What are your thoughts on the move by Dallas? And more importantly, how does your dad, longtime Cowboys fan, feel about it?
My entire family, longtime Cowboys diehards. Look, to me, Kellen Moore wasn't the problem. The second that Jerry Jones got rid of Amari Cooper, that was the problem. The Cowboys no longer had that downfield, deep threat wide receiver. Dak Prescott still led in every statistical category, but still the pressure was just put on him for doing too much, not having the depth behind him, the supporting cast, the wide receiver weapons. Cowboys quarterback target depth was 10th best in the league. So Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. You just don't have the receivers to go downfield. Kellen Moore wasn't the problem. The problem is and always will be Jerry Jones. As far as my dad, he is so over Dak Prescott. He is ready for some new blood. He's kind of hoping that Brady changes his mind and wants to go to the Cowboys.
Ross, you had some harsh words for Brandon Staley a few weeks back. So much so, I think your voice is still like having problems today. The amount of vitriol that was coming up about Staley. But now you have Kellen Moore replacing Joe Lombardi with the Chargers. I mean, I think we all kind of agree that maybe Staley should have been the one replaced. But do you think this actually helps the Chargers?
Well, listen, I am very surprised by everything going on in Dallas. I got to be honest with you guys. I had no idea that Cowboys fans were clamoring to fire Kellen Moore. I think when Dak, Pat, you mentioned the stats, but when Dak came back from injury, nobody scored more points. Nobody scored more touchdowns. And that was with Dak throwing all kinds of interceptions. And if you look, they don't have elite personnel. CeeDee Lamb's a good receiver. He's not a top 5 guy. Dalton Schultz, good tight end, not a top 5 guy. They don't have other receivers that scare you. Gallup was a huge disappointment as a number 2 receiver. The running game was okay, I would say, probably pretty good with Pollard at times. I am stunned. I went on a Dallas radio station last week, and I couldn't believe how much they had their pitchforks out for Kellen Moore, to which I say, careful what you wish for, Cowboys fans. You wanted him out. Now he's gone. And now Mike McCarthy is reportedly going to call the plays. Are you serious? Mike McCarthy? If you remember his offense the last couple years in Green Bay, I bet you Brian does. It was not good. Not good at all. I mean, it was basically just the receivers running one-on-ones and the quarterback dropping back. Very little motion, very little scheming or getting designed routes that got people open. I would be stunned if the Cowboys don't take a step back offensively next year. And so whenever they open up bets, whatever they are, on the Cowboys offense next year, I will be taking the under. I think this is a huge downgrade for the Cowboys. I think it's an upgrade for Kellen Moore. I think Kellen Moore is a top 10 offensive coordinator in the NFL, and I have no idea why Cowboys fans evidently disliked him so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ryan, to go and look at it, I think the job that Kellen Moore did when Cooper Rush was starting for the Cowboys, I think really gave us an indication of how good he may have been at being an offensive coordinator, really tailoring a playbook to his strengths. And it does feel like whenever Dak was in there that it was just a little bit off. It felt like the Cooper Rush offense with Dak would have been unstoppable.
It looked like they were starting to trend that way, right? But I actually like it, and I think it's pretty telling that he gets, the Cowboys part ways with him and he immediately gets hired by the Chargers. You know, a guy who's doing that bad at his job isn't going to get hired the next week. I think Kellen Moore is innovative. You know, I think, you know, they had some offensive line issues. Tyron Smith wasn't healthy the whole year. Ezekiel Elliott is clearly not the more effective back there. You know, but I look at him, I think now he goes, just like Ross said, he goes to an upgraded situation where you have Keenan Allen, you have Mike Williams, you've got Austin Eckler, you got a pretty talented defense, at least some good players on the other side. So I think it's an upgrade for him. And look, as far as Mike McCarthy offenses, Ross is right. There's not much to him. It's wide receiver ISOs. You see him running, you know, one-on-ones. And if that's the way that they're going to go, I'm surprised that they took a step back. It almost kind of reminds me of how we initially looked at the Lombardi situation in San Diego when he was fired. You know, to me, Mike McCarthy, I don't think is the head coach long-term there. And it feels like this is just something they're doing to placate the fans, you know, and keep things, I guess, intact. But I don't think McCarthy's the long-term answer.
Let's move to the games from last weekend. Championship weekend, the Eagles absolutely rout the Niners, who played a quarterback with a torn UCL and couldn't throw the ball more than 3 yards in front of him. Savvy strategy on that front. Ross, did we learn anything about the Eagles we didn't already know? Like, did this game tell us anything?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things, I guess. You know, that even against a team like San Francisco, who everybody thought was really good, that Eagles defensive line can still just dominate. Whether it was Purdy in there and, you know, Hassan Reddick was getting in there and hurting his elbow, or Josh Johnson and Ndamukong Suh was beating the right guard and knocking Johnson out of the game. You know, I keep hearing all these people saying, yeah, well, what would have happened if the Niners had Purdy or if they had their quarterbacks? They didn't even have anybody that could throw the ball. The only thing that people are missing with that, the Eagles caused those injuries. They forced those injuries. These were not like non-contact fluke injuries. These were the D lineman beating the offensive blocker and hitting the crap out of the passer penalties. I mean, not penalties, injuries. Legal, very legal, no penalties. So they deserve that. The other thing is, I didn't think Jalen Hurts played that well. So we didn't learn that much about Jalen Hurts, but we did learn that the Eagles can beat a good team by 24 points when Hurts doesn't have a good game. That's eye-opening to me. The other thing is the Eagles ran the ball very effectively against the number one rush defense in the NFL. The Eagles' offensive line is incredible, and that'll obviously be a key against the Chiefs. So I think what we learned is the Eagles have the best offensive line and defensive line in the NFL. They have had that all year, and that's probably the biggest reason why they're so good.
Brian, what did you make of the Eagles coming out? Because that game was kind of flipped a little bit right before half when it could have been 14-7 going into half. Then all of a sudden, the Josh Johnson turnover happens. And boom, it's 21-7. It feels like they're never going to come back. But the Eagles put together this drive. I think it was the second drive of the second half, where I think Hurts ran the ball like 6 times. It was just designed rushes to Jalen Hurts the entire way down the field. It just felt so out of place for what we were seeing in that game because, frankly, it was just a lot of Jalen Hurts like overthrowing his receivers deep downfield, wasn't it?
Yeah, early on, it's what it felt like. I mean, you had A.J. Brown early on a deep ball, sailed that one. They didn't let him utilize his legs as much as I thought they would have in the first half. But when Miles Sanders is running the way he is, that line is blocking, and even you bring Boston Scott in from the 10-yard line, he scores on that play. So I think 4 rushing touchdowns for the Eagles in that game again against San Francisco, who we all said the way to beat the Niners is through the air, and that's how teams have proven it. Well, the Eagles went in there and they ran the ball down their throats. So I thought that was very impressive. And I think the impressive part about Hurts not using his legs, it just goes to show you when they want to turn it on, he can be an effective runner. They didn't decide to until that point. And that drive, he took them 60 yards down the field. So he's a dangerous quarterback. Like Ross said, if he's not hitting his targets downfield, he can do things with his legs and he can affect the game other ways. And that offensive line is solid when healthy.
Pam, this was a double whammy for you. You had that Niners ticket that we were talking about to get to the Super Bowl, and we know how you felt about the Eagles all season long.
Mm-hmm.
Has a team ever had an easier path to get to a Super Bowl? Because I don't think any of this matters outside of the 2 weeks that we talk about the game, because we have so much to talk about. Because I'm pretty sure you could probably go back and circle some of those Patriots teams that played 2 games against, like, oh my God, like those are who they played to go to the Super Bowl. And then we just forget about it after the game is over. So that's probably what happens to the Eagles if they end up winning. But it's kind of crazy to see they play that weird Giants team, and then Christian McCaffrey's playing quarterback against them in the NFC Championship game.
Exactly. So, yes, I did have the 49ers to make it to the Super Bowl, but per your guys' advice, I did end up taking the Eagles on the money line, and of course, it worked out. Yes, the Eagles have had a heck of an easy path, probably the easiest in the NFL. 6 games all season, that's it, against opponents inside the top 10 for defense DVOA, and all of those 6 games had flaws. San Francisco, they almost used a running back as a quarterback. The Saints, they were playing against the Eagles, who didn't have Jalen Hurts in that matchup. They played Dallas twice, but one of them was with Minshew as the Eagles quarterback. The other was with Cooper Rush as the Cowboys quarterback. And then they faced Washington twice. One of those was a loss. So you can't really get, yes, this is a very solid team, very solid defense. Everything that Ross said, I'm on board with now. I get it. I see it. But the offenses that they have played, the Eagles, only one noteworthy quarterback, and that was Aaron Rodgers, who, let's be honest, did not have a good season. And now you have to work. I get it. You work with the schedule that you get. But the Chiefs' path, much more difficult slate of opponents. They're talking about facing solid quarterbacks in Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen, Tom Brady. Eagles didn't get any of that. They faced good defenses in the Broncos, the Rams, the Titans, the Niners. It was just a much more difficult path to where they are ready from all angles. Do the Chiefs have the same similar data points as the Eagles do? No, but they've been tested. They've been tested in the trenches. They've been tested against the run, against the pass, every defense, good play callers, good head coaches. It's just a different path. So yes, the Eagles are solid, but now this is Mahomes and this is Andy Reid. I guess y'all know where I'm going.
We'll save that for our look ahead to the Super Bowl. We really break it down. But I do want to talk about the Chiefs and the Bengals game, 23-20. Brian, because I think that you and I live in the same space in a lot of this stuff. That are you shocked at the amount of people, I'm going to call them, I don't know, Bengals bettors, who think that the game may have been rigged?
Yes. I am very shocked. I mean, look, I get it. Like there are a lot of penalties called, and you see all the pictures of Mahomes with the referee. They're swapping jerseys, they're funny memes and funny gifts and all. But look, these guys go out there, they put it on the line. To me, I don't believe it's rigged. They go out there, they play. There's an outcome that happens at the end. And usually the ones that say it's rigged are the ones that are either betting on the opposite side or rooting for the opposite side. So, had their team won, then the other side of the fan base is saying the NFL is rigged. So, look, everybody wants to rationalize why their team loses and why it's okay. I think, you just see it goes a little far sometimes.
Ross, do you think this is a sort of where the legalization of betting has become so ubiquitous now? I think it's 33 states you can lay games. There's a lot of first-time bettors. And then you get this game, which is going to be probably the most watched so far this season, that even a lot of casual people who don't normally watch football throughout the course of the season, not only are they watching, maybe they played their first bet on this game, and now they're just in shambles, not knowing what's going on. Because you could have watched, I don't know, Rams Seahawks from week 18 and been like, yeah, the calls in this game were terrible and affected the outcome of the playoffs.
Well, a couple things. First of all, if it's rigged, Bengals fans, doesn't that mean it was rigged last year when your team went to the Super Bowl? Careful what accusations you make. If it's rigged, doesn't that mean the game was rigged in Buffalo when you won in the snow? Like it just doesn't make any sense. My favorite part of when they rigged it is when they told Tyler Huntley, when the Ravens were about to take the lead on you guys in the fourth quarter, and they told Tyler Huntley, make sure you reach the ball over the goal line. We're going to tell Logan Wilson that you're going to do that, so Logan Wilson can bat the ball out of his hands and Hubbard can take it 95 yards. It's just, they made some bad calls. It was not a well officiated game. Mm-hmm. The extra down that the Chiefs got on 3rd and long was horrible. That said, they still had to punt on that drive after the next set of downs. So it didn't really affect the game that much. It was unfortunate, but it'd be a much different conversation if the Chiefs went on to score a touchdown on that drive. Ultimately, the Bengals had the ball twice with the game tied, 2020, and they weren't able to get it done. And I don't know why Bengals fans can't accept that part of this thing. I'm just a big believer in personal responsibility, personal accountability. The Bengals played a great game. The Bengals had their chances. They were not able to get it done late when they had multiple opportunities with which to do so.
Pam, did anyone say, Tyler Boyd? I think Tyler Boyd hit his over, because the trend that we've been seeing now is like if anyone gets injured in a game, it's like, well, I need my money back. That prop needs to be voided. It wasn't fair to me. I saw Bengals bettors saying the same thing online.
I live in the market where that stuff never happens to us. So as soon as he was injured, it was a loss. For all you crybabies that it should be canceled and voided and get your money back, don't be betting if you can't handle that.
Yeah, you're also allowed to bet unders. I've heard that.
Exactly.
True.
And it actually took me, I was looking through Twitter, like profusely trying to find whether he was actually injured and out of the game, because nobody was talking about Tyler Boyd.
Well, it's funny that no one talked about Boyd, because it's the moment that the Bengals started experiencing any sort of success on offense, it was through Tyler Boyd, because they were just trying to double chase, double Higgins. And Boyd's an actual threat to do something, unlike Hayden Hurst or the Crocodile Hunter, Steve Irwin, or whatever the hell that guy is. Like, he's a real receiver that you have out there. And like, he was clearly just chunk plays down the middle of the field, like breaking it off. And then all of a sudden he's out of the game. And it felt like their passing offense at that point, just really completely stalled out.
Absolutely. He was very effective in this matchup. It was the right call, taking his over receptions. It was just the unfortunate that he had to get injured and left the game.
Okay, we're here. One game left. Super Bowl, Eagles and Chiefs. This game opened at DraftKings Sportsbook with the Eagles as 1-point favorites. In other spots, it was the Chiefs -1 the moment that the game ended. Now, it does seem like all of the books have converged right around the same line. This got up as high as 2.5 in favor of the Philadelphia Eagles about a few hours after the line opened. Now it's going to 1.5, 2, depending on what book that you're using. So within a field goal game, which means as fans, as spectators, we expect this to be a pretty competitive game. Although this is the first time in Patrick Mahomes' career that he has been an underdog in a playoff game. And I still don't think he's ever played a road playoff game. I might be wrong on that, but he's had his neutral site games and he's had his home games, Brian. But I don't think there's ever been a road game for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, you know what? Look, I've learned with Patrick Mahomes, every time they give us a reason to count him out, right? He just comes out and does something to blow you away. Like I thought last week, right? He's not going to be able to move around very much at all. He actually kind of surprised me with his mobility and really showed that all he needs is his arm to be right. I mean, that guy was making some throws that were pretty incredible for being, someone who was a week away from a high ankle sprain, and even that, sprint to the sideline. I mean, everything I like about him, everything you see in him, he's a competitor. He fights. I like watching him play. He's a gamer. So, I think this will be a good game. Not worried about the location, but I will say this, Arrowhead, not Burrowhead, that is a great home field advantage. So we'll see how it works out on a neutral site.
Ross, I was in Minnesota when the Eagles played the Patriots in the Super Bowl. It was the first Radio Row, the first Super Bowl that I got to cover. There's just a lot that goes into it. Now, the consensus of that week was this is just very overwhelming for the Eagles. They don't have a lot of experience with the week leading up to it, the commitments. Obviously, Brady and the Patriots, they know what's going on. Turns out in the game, it didn't matter whatsoever, or it worked against the Patriots somehow. How much stock do you, because we're going to hear all these, we have 2 weeks to fill in terms of content. We're going to hear the stupidest stories by the end of the next 10 days until we actually get to the game. Do you think this week lead up to the Super Bowl means anything, like tiring people out, how focused they're going to be, or is that just nonsense?
Well, I do think it means something specifically in this game because the Eagles are incredibly healthy. The Eagles had all 22 starters available against the 49ers, and they all came out of the game healthy. Landon Dickerson banged up his elbow, but There are already reports that say he'll be ready to play. Whereas the Chiefs, we know Mahomes is still nursing the ankle. They lost several receivers the other night. They obviously lost L'Jarius Sneed. So I think the extra week in this instance really benefits the Chiefs because it gives them a chance to get as many of those guys back healthy, ready as possible for the Super Bowl. So certainly benefits the Chiefs in that regard for sure. Andy Reid has a really, really good history after a bye, after an off week. If you look at him throughout all his time, both in Philadelphia and in Kansas City. By the way, did you know he used to coach the Eagles? You probably don't. You probably didn't know that. You probably didn't hear that yet, that he used to coach the Eagles. But no, I think if anything, I can only say that it seems like the extra week benefits the Chiefs for both of those reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I misspoke, Pam, a little bit earlier. Not that Patrick Mahomes hasn't played an official road game. I guess, the Tampa Super Bowl was in Tampa, so I guess that's technically a road game, although they could have been the home team in that game for all I know, in terms of how they actually decide who the home and away team is in the Super Bowl. Is that something I could Google and find out in 2 seconds? Probably. I do not do that type of research. That is the commitment that I make to this program. What were your thoughts on the line immediately when it opened?
No, the Eagles should not be favored. I was watching this live when it opened as a pick and it moved to 2.5 in Eagles' favor. No, the Eagles should not be favored because of the false illusion, I will say that, of the Eagles' dominance over a cupcake schedule. But yes, they should be favorites because Ross already mentioned the Eagles are healthier than the Chiefs. And also, as Ross mentioned, I'm giving him a lot of credit today. The Eagles pass rush, it is a sick unit. They finished the regular season second in pressure rate, first in sacks. If there's anything that I love looking at when it comes to the NFL is the pass rush. And I just wish I was born to be a pass rusher because I know that I would crush that. And so I love looking at this unit, and the Eagles are it. They are 61% of their hits have been converted into sacks. The league average is 43. 28% of the Eagles' pressures have been converted into sacks. The league average is 19. They're dominant on all forces, but they face an easy schedule. Now, the Chiefs are also top 5, and when it comes to me, who am I going to trust more? In pressure situations, I'm going to trust Mahomes. The line, it's fair. It's a fair line. And you're going to see it move from Eagles 2.5. It's already at 1.5 today. If even one of those wide receivers for the Chiefs get healthy, the line is going to move closer to the Chiefs' favor. So you're going to see this line go up and down every which way from now until kickoff.
Okay. Brian, I will throw out that I asked Matthew Slater at that Super Bowl if there's any truth to the rumor that Patrick Chung's nickname was Well Hung, and I'd never seen anyone more mortified in my life.
Hey, Chung was awesome, man. He actually was one of the guys that took my younger brother Casey on an official visit up at Oregon. It was one of his hosts, so I'll have to confirm that one for you, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it may have rattled him from the game. I have no idea. But we are going to talk about that game all next week. The spread, the props, everything you can imagine, the biggest deep dive into the Super Bowl anywhere, dare I say, on the web. So for Ross, for Pam, for Brian, I'm Pat Mayo. We'll see you then.